All righty, we're ready to go. Welcome to tonight's Forest Conservation Commission meeting held on Zoom on Monday the 7th, 2021 at 5:30. Pursuant to the open meeting laws, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made whether perceived or unperceived by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. We'll start with roll call. I'll call the names and say here. Jim Hornsby?
Here.
Andy Liss?
Yeah.
Louis Farrer?
Here.
John Brandt's here. Chris Boyer?
Here.
And do we have the other new member here?
Jim Cusick,
Yes.
that's me.
Oh, okay. Jim Cusick.
Yeah.
Welcome aboard, James.
Thank you.
Okay. So just to let everyone know, tonight's meeting is by Zoom, and the members tonight are on a Zoom meeting are Jim Hornsby, Andy Liss, Louis Ferrer, John Brandt, Chris Boyer, and Jim Cusick.
Boyle, John, B-O-Y-L-E.
Boyer, okay.
Boyle, B-O-Y-L-E.
Oh, okay.
Oh, he's not. I
All
don't
righty.
think His hopes were on television. I gotta remember. Okay.
And also tonight, helping us from Planning Conservation is Christine Sylvia and Bill Kenny. And I don't know if Brittany is here, but that's our crew and Fed TV. First on the agenda tonight is old business. Review of status required restoration plan regarding 57 Frederick Street, continued from May 3rd, 2021 meeting. Bill, do you have any update on this?
Yeah, very quickly. Excuse me. I think at the last meeting, we discussed the fact that this particular property, 57 Frederick Street, is owned by a woman who, her name escapes me right now, but we went down and visited with her. And frankly, most of what she's done in her backyard has been self-defense. I think that there's been a lot of many drainage issues with the swale that runs behind that Frederick Street area. It's connected to a much larger problem with that whole neighborhood. And this particular owner and her property had come before you on a cease and desist order where we'd asked her to cease filling in the wetlands. She's not actively filling any wetlands now. I think that we tabled it last time so that we would discontinue any enforcement action against her. And I think that remains the case. There's no need to proceed with any enforcement action against her. Paul Ferlin and I are trying to somehow put together a larger solution to that neighborhood problem, which is not just her property, but many properties in that area. So I would recommend that you just table this indefinitely. I don't see any need to have it on the agenda each month because the report's going to be the same for the foreseeable future, namely that Paul and I are trying to come up with a solution that's not going to be easy, and it's probably going to involve multiple properties. So I just asked that last time we continued it generally just to dismiss the enforcement action and take it off the table.
Okay. Can I have a motion to table this?
I move to table indefinitely.
Okay, let's take a vote. This is just for the old members that were here during this one. Jim Hornsby,
Aye.
Andy Liss,
Aye.
Louis,
Aye.
John, aye. Vote continues. We'll put that on tabled. Next one is a report by city planner and acting conservation agent regarding violations at 2450 Indian Town, continued from May 3rd's meeting.
On this one, the city forester, Mike Labasier, has actually been in touch with the owner and the owner's representative, who's a wetland scientist. And they're actually considering a scenario in which the property might be sold and the proceeds used to restore the wetland areas and the habitat areas that were damaged. So Mike is actively speaking with the owner and negotiating that possibility. So I just ask you to table this to the next month so we could maybe get a further report on it.
Okay. Can I have a motion to table it?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second. Okay, vote. Jim,
Aye.
Andy,
Aye.
Louis,
Aye.
John, I. Vote, we put that till next meeting. Then next is a report by city planner, acting conservation agent regarding enforcement order concerning Bay Street and Chase Street continued from May 3rd.
Yeah.
We don't want the table to get too full of items. So instead of asking you to table this one, what I'm going to suggest is this. This also was before you on an enforcement action. One of the downhill neighbors complained that there was significant stormwater runoff onto his property as a result of new construction activities. And we visited the site, the then city engineer Chris Gallagher and I, and spoke with the representative of the owner of the property that was causing the problem. And we came up with a solution, which was to have a swale constructed along the back of a couple of properties in that vicinity. And I'm told anecdotally that the swale's been completed and that it works. And we want to verify that. So Dennis Silva, the city inspector, has told me that he will go out there tomorrow and inspect the swale. Actually, Frank Hilaria from the building department's also been out there and he's happy with it. So that's significant. So what I'm going to suggest to you is that you authorize the dismissal of the enforcement action subject to the city inspector coming back with a good report tomorrow indicating that the swale has been constructed in a manner that solves the problem.
All right. Can I have a motion to dismiss the enforcement order pending observation from city department that the swale is to meets our needs? I can have a motion.
Yes, I move. So I so move.
Second.
I'll second it.
Okay, vote. Jim,
Aye.
Andy,
Aye.
Louis,
Aye.
John, I. Vote passes. All right. Next is notice of intent, NOI file number SE-24-756. Owner applicant Carlos B. Abdab Kemverda. Project location is Frederick Street. Assessors map is C-15-7. Table from May 3rd, 21st meeting. Filed by SciTech Inc. on behalf of applicant Carlos B. Abdab Kemverda to construct a single-family home with associated grading and utilities. A portion of the project falls within the 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to report on that also. The matter was tabled at the last meeting with the expectation that we would get some quotes for a third-party peer review of the notice of intent for this project. And I've gathered together 4 quotes. They are somewhat divergent. And what I'm going to suggest is that you give me an opportunity to review all 4 of them, and to see if I can come up with a selection of the best candidate. I'll do that in connection with Paul Furland because of his growing expertise in this area. And what I'd suggest is give me an opportunity to review those 4 with him tomorrow. Come up with a preferred consultant, and then notify the owner that we've done that and that we would ask for an escrow deposit in advance because the fee is going to be paid by the owner, and try and just go ahead and if the board would just authorize me to make the selection in connection with the consultation with Paul, and get it out of the way this week so we don't delay them any further. And I know there was one other piece to the puzzle, and that was to make sure that there was no conflict of interest between any of the consultants that we might select and and Dan Aguirre and SciTech, who represent the owner. And I see Dan's on the call, and I just want to verify that there is no conflict with him with those four.
No, Bill, as we spoke earlier today, any of them would be fine. As I stated before, Prime Engineering, who does a lot of work in the city as well, probably knows the area a little bit better than some of the outside consultants. I know one's from Attleboro, a few from Rhode Island. But again, you can review them all. If you have any questions for me, give me a call and I'll help you with that, and we'll get it out, get you the check so that we can get this resolved.
Sounds good. So the motion that I would hope that somebody would make is to go ahead and delegate to me the decision as to which consultant to pick, and to collect the escrow fund and order the study to be done.
Okay. Can I have a motion to have Mr. Kenny pick an engineer and collect the funds for this project?
I make that motion for Mr. Kenny to proceed.
Second? Okay. We'll take a roll call vote. Jim Hornsby,
Aye.
Andy Liss,
Aye.
Louis Farrer,
Aye.
John, aye. Measure passes 4-0. Next is a notice of intent, NOI file number SC-24-761, applicant of Conservation Recreation DCR. Project location is Freetown, Fall River State Forest near Copacut Road and Grinnell Path in Fall River, map 19, lot 10. This was tabled from May 3rd, 2021, filed by SWCA environmental consultant on behalf of applicant DCR for expansion of off-highway motorcycle trail network in Freetown, Fall River State Forest for work occurring within the designated NHESP inhabited crossing of a BVW, 2 intermittent streams, and is proposed within the 100-foot buffer zone of several other wetland resources. Overall goal is to maximize a minimum of 4 miles of trail, potentially up to 7 of trails within existing state forests, having been lost with the deposition of 300 acres to the Fall River Redevelopment Authority.
Mr. Chairman, if I may speak?
Sure.
Just for purposes of full disclosure, I am a seasonal supervisor for the Department of Conservation and Recreation.
Okay, on this one, this will just be the old members voting on this one.
Correct, I understand that, but I do have
Oh.
some questions, Mr. Chairman. I
okay.
just want to be
Why is
clear
that, John? Just a quick question. Why is it that the new members wouldn't vote on approving or disapproving this request?
Because they weren't here when it first came in front of us. We tabled
Okay.
this, so it's
Yeah.
old business back on.
But they could speak to it.
Yeah,
Okay.
They could speak to it just as any member of the public could speak to it. This is the continuation of a hearing that was opened at the
Yeah,
last meeting.
I understand that.
So
I just
they
wanted
just
to
can't
get
vote
the,
on the,
I just wanted to hear their opinion if they had one, if they wish to offer one. That was all.
no problem with that at all. That'd be fine. So, Mr. Chairman, if I could just report on this one briefly, as you know, the matter was before the commission at the last meeting, and upon Jim Hornsby's motion, it was continued to today so that the members could muse on it and consider it further. And I know that he's done some investigation. In the interim, we also engaged the assistance of Andrew Poyant, who is the so-called circuit rider for DEP for the Southeast region of DEP. And their role is to provide guidance and assistance to local conservation commissions. So we sent him the NOI and asked for his opinion as to whether it should be approved or disapproved or approved with conditions. And he sent us a memo after I spoke with him last Friday. I've shared that with Mr. Janegy, and that's and with the members, all the members have seen that, the summary of our conversation, of my conversation with Mr. Poyant. So that's where we are. I think I don't know what I think as to procedurally where we should go at this point. I suppose if there's further discussion, further questions that any of the members have after seeing that correspondence with Mr. Poyant, that would be appropriate. At some point, a motion could be made. Maybe a motion to approve, motion to disapprove, motion to approve with conditions, and maybe a discussion of what conditions might be appropriate. I know that Mr. Janegy has suggested some conditions, which unfortunately came in just after the stroke of 5, and I had already left my office, and I was able to check my email here from home, and I saw them, and I know I've asked Christine to print them so that we have them available, because I suppose there's a technical way for me to look at my email and do the Zoom at the same time, but it's beyond my capacity.
Is that 5 o'clock today?
Yeah. And in all fairness,
That's okay. I would
conversation-
like to see them.
yeah, it was distributed, Christine, right? Everybody, you
Maybe
there?
I missed it. By email?
Yes.
I have both a computer and a phone, so I will look for it. I must have missed it.
Today's have
Okay.
not yet been distributed. The ones that came in after 5 o'clock have not.
Oh,
been
right.
distributed.
Right. It's the one that I'm talking about is a summary of my conversation with Mr. Poyant.
Yes,
That was distributed to everybody.
that was distributed.
Yeah.
The members have
Those-
everything up until today.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I might,
Yes, go ahead, Paul.
yeah, thank you. Paul, I just want to introduce myself and sort of remind us of where we are here. Paul Janegy for DCR. And, if there's some various questions, I just want to introduce a couple other folks from my team. Jess Ann Kelly from SWCA is here. Chase Bernier, also from SWCA, Wetland Specialist. Also have a couple of people on the phone from Executive Office of Environmental Affairs. Kurt Gertner is with us, and Scott Morrill, our OHV coordinator. And then also Steve Willett, who's our district ranger, is on the call as well. So if any questions come up that different people can answer, hopefully we can answer any of them. And I just for overview, again, I did give a presentation last time, but just to highlight what we're asking, what's in front of the commission tonight is we have proposals to make some improvements to existing trails in the Freetown Fall River State Forest in preparation for authorizing an additional loop of allowed off-highway motorcycle riding on that loop. Those improvements that we're proposing are primarily installation of what we call puncheons or bog bridges, both within the buffer across, I think, 2 intermittent streams, and then within one BVW that the existing trail currently crosses. I want to highlight a couple of things about that. One is these are existing trails in the state forest now, so we're not talking about new trail creation. And particularly with the BVW crossing, that the current trail through there is approximately 6 or 7 feet wide. We're proposing to build a 3-foot wide puncheon, and then allowing approximately 725 square feet to naturalize of wetlands. So we actually, this project that we're proposing is protective of the resource and will in fact be allowing some of the current resource area to naturalize through mitigation. I know there's a lot of opinions within the room on off-highway motorcycle riding at the state forest. That's not really what we're here to debate. And apologies for the not being able to suggest some language for conditions prior to this afternoon. It's been I think I just spoke with Mr. Kenny last week, and then had spoken with SWCA, and so I put some suggested language together. I do have I could share those screens when we get to that. I wanted to give it to Mr. Kenny because this is what we should be talking tonight, is what conditions, if the commission wants to approve conditions, what those might be, and so I can share that language with my screen tonight when that's appropriate. So I think that's my initial spiel.
I guess the best way would to go about this, we do have a list of some conditions we want to see. And I guess, Bill, should we probably discuss the conditions that we have? That way there's a problem, we can hash it out before we put it in?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we did get some advice from Andrew Poyant. I think it's important to pay attention to his advice and to raise the issues that he raised and to talk about it.
And I know I did talk to the environmental police, and they do patrol that area. Now, one thing I was wondering, how often do you think it'd be monitored?
So let me invite Steve Willett, our district ranger, to speak a little bit about our patrols and whatnot that are in the forest now. Is that Steve?
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry. My name's Steve Willett. I'm the regional ranger for the South Region DCR. So I supervise all the rangers in DCR who actually wear the ranger patch on their uniform. In regards to patrols, I was on the I did watch the last hearing. So I was trying to feed or get the right answers to Paul Janegy, and I talked to him afterwards and said, hey, I'd be available tonight. So with that said, patrolling during the summer, I do employ 2 seasonal rangers that are there specifically for OHV purposes. And they work approximately from the beginning of May until October. And their duty is to patrol. They patrol the off-highway vehicle parking lot. They check registrations to make sure that everybody is registered to properly ride on our trails. And they're actually out there patrolling the forest to ensure that people remain on the trails. And in fact, this past weekend, I did encounter some folks, and I personally spoke to them, about what it is DCR is trying to move forward with, and the importance of following the rules. So we do have, and besides the 2 rangers that are specifically assigned from May to October, we also have full-time rangers such as myself, and we do have a lieutenant who does patrol that area. In addition to that, I do coordinate with environmental police, the Massachusetts Environmental Police, and Fall River Environmental Police. So we try to work collectively. And in fact, oh gosh, my name's dropping there. Mike Labossiere, sorry, yes.
Yeah.
We met in a parking lot out off of Copacabana Road, and we actually did, under Mike's guidance, we did form a group to better coordinate and communicate patrol efforts in that area, so that if one of us encounters an issue, then the others know about it. And we're trying to progressively move forward to ensure better communication and hopefully better coordination of all our efforts in doing patrols in that area.
All right. Just to let everyone know, we will have citizen input after we're done with this. So if you're chatting, I'll make sure I hit you when we're done with our questions. Now, I guess this will be open dusk to dawn. And does a gate close at dusk, or is that just?
So we are open dusk to dawn. And right now we do have Makepeace roads, Payne roads, and Makepeace, Payne, and a portion of Hathaway Path that are closed to regular motor vehicles. And in some cases, when we do have an uptick in overnight activity, we will reassign a ranger to patrol in the evening.
Now, let's say we have a rainy season in June, and how often would you inspect for like damage, runoff, visible erosion? Is that like a weekly thing, or is that something you would do after a big rainstorm, or is that how do you?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that, in terms of, well, there's 2 questions there. One is maintenance, and the other is sort of if we get, say muddy season or something like that, we have the capacity to close the trails for particular mud conditions. Sometimes we will delay opening if it's been a very muddy spring. Beyond that, the trail conditions largely are, the trail conditions, and we're not out there on a regular basis sort of checking them or maintaining them. I think one of the things we did want to do through this NOI was ask for an ongoing condition to allow us to do maintenance on the trails per our O&M plan.
Okay, sounds good. Let's see. So now you probably have like an annual report of number of visits, spills, injuries. That's all taken care of, right?
So I think, I mean, we would have any incident reports and Steve would have that information. And I think one of the things I talked to Mr. Kenny about was, whether as a part of this process, we'd be willing to come back to the commission in say a year or when we were done with the project and make a report to the commission on things like that. Any incidents, any any enforcement actions, any spills, anything like that, that had occurred.
Okay.
As well, I think, part of this proposal, we're also proposing to close some trails that are out there now that are unauthorized trails in the forest. And so, that report would include a report on how those closures are doing.
Now, also, you'll have a kiosk at the parking lot, I guess, that'll have a registration, the hours, the sign, all that kind of information they'll need.
We do have a kiosk at the parking area. And, I think, again, there is some information on that. But as a part of this, we could certainly agree to a condition that, talked about posting our regulations, posting an updated trail map so that riders knew what was authorized and what was not authorized. If there was other information that anyway, updating that information and making sure that was posted and in good condition.
Okay. How about, do you post like penalties for unauthorized takes, like possessing, harassing, selling, or destroying habitat? Do you list that?
Steve can correct me if I'm wrong here, but we can do fines for violations of our regulations, right? Which would include. Go ahead, Steve.
If I can interrupt. So in regards to fines, one of our past seasonals did up on that kiosk a list of some of the violations that commonly occur that are mostly pertinent to OHV vehicles. In regards to what you're discussing, we could certainly entertain that, but that's also just part of the overall DCR rules and regs.
And another thing was you'll have keep on the trail signs, and then like maybe when you're coming up on a blind spot, you'll have hikers may be present. You'll have signs like that throughout the trail.
So what we have is signs that indicate the allowed direction of travel and wayfinding for OHV users, and we also have signs that indicate if there's an intersection, for example, that would indicate what trail was not allowed for OHV users. So those are sort of arrow signs and or do not enter signs. And then, if there's a blind corner or something like that, we would usually have a caution sign, something like that, at that location.
Okay. And then, I mean, we'll also have in the conditions, sediment control and all that during the work. The one thing we have in there is the turtle protection plan. You're familiar with that?
So we would, we'd be happy to have a condition that had us provide the approved turtle protection plan to you prior to start of work.
Okay. All right, that's generally, let me open it up to the members. Louis, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions after reviewing the emails and the original application and going over the conditions you just went over. I'm not sure if I know Paul may want to present some conditions as well. I don't have any questions yet, and just waiting to hear from anyone else.
All righty. Andy, any questions?
No, like Louis said, the emails have been great and they've helped us a lot. So thank you very much. And if we can implement those conditions or some of them, that'd be terrific.
Okay. Jim?
Yeah, I have some questions. First, I'd like to separate two issues. And before that, after I get through, I'd like to reserve some time after other members of the public, including our new members, have a chance to speak. But one issue is the technical construction of the trail. And that was, that seems to be covered. I simply do not have the confidence to judge that, whether the width of the puncheons or so forth. And I think that was the main thrust of, and I would ask Mr. Kenny that, or you, I think that was the main thrust of, the only thrust of the consultant's emails. Is that right? Did I miss something?
Well,
Well,
they're good.
Jim, there are a couple of things in Mr. Poyant's email, but one of them was in fact the structure of the crossings, the platforms, the puncheons.
Yeah.
And
Right.
his particular issue was that, in his opinion, he thought that the plan should be designed or redesigned so that the platforms would be pile supported, so that they'd be elevated. He had about, in his memo, about 2 feet off the ground, and that would allow natural hydrology to persist and to have vegetation grow without obstruction, because his reading of the plan was that the crossing platforms were at ground level. So that I thought was an issue
That's
that ought
what
to be
I
addressed.
understood. No, is that an acceptable condition, Mr. Jonaghy?
So let me discuss that for a minute, if I could. And I do believe we have some details of the puncheons in there, but typically they're supported on 6x6 sills, which would rest on the ground. So they are not pile supported, but they would not obstruct hydrology in any way. One of the things that Mr. Poynt's email, pile supported is a specific term that is used in the wetland regs. And in this case, I frankly don't think it makes sense, and I don't think it is practical, because the BVW crossing that we're talking about is a very rocky area. And so to try to put posts or piles in the ground vertically would probably require an auger, if not something like a bigger machinery with an auger. It doesn't make any sense to me from a wetland protection point of view or a hydrology point of view. And I guess I think one of the things Mr. Poisson may have missed in his review of the NOI was the fact that this is it's an existing trail with an existing impact that's roughly 6 feet wide. And by creating this narrower puncheon, we're in fact benefiting that BVW crossing. So, I mean, if you guys are going to push us, based on his email to some kind of pile supported, we can talk about that, but from a wetland perspective, I can't see how it makes any sense.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Kenny, I'm sorry, actually you were talking, I was not. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just curious, Paul, if you could just maybe help me understand that a little better. I understand the idea of a pile and how that would raise it up, and it would seem to me that's less obstructive than having something at ground level. But you say you have another system other than piles that's adequate, do you think? I just don't see it, and
So
because I'm not an engineer, but
so we would build the puncheon or bog bridge on 6x6 sills spaced roughly every I think 6 feet. Right.
perpendicular to the line of the trail.
It would be perpendicular to the trail, and it would be like a 3 foot long 6x6 sill laid on the ground. So, and that would be perpendicular to the line of the trail, which crosses the wetland. So it wouldn't obstruct hydrology in any way. Technically, it would be 6 inches of something sitting within a BVW, right? But it's a currently impacted BVW. And again, to turn that into a pile supported structure at that same interval, instead of say a 3 foot long 6x6, you'd be talking about 2 6x6 posts planted vertically at least 24 feet into the ground, and then raising your structure up.
24 feet?
No, sorry, 24 inches. Did I say 24 feet?
That's going to be a big auger.
Apologies. And 24 inches is a minimum, right? Because you need to get below the freeze thaw line with that structure. And again, this is really rocky soil here. So I don't know from a practical point of view that we would be
I saw
able
the
to do it.
pictures.
And Again,
I do know the way Paul's gonna do it on the plans. That's how, like, if you worked on Appalachian Trail, that's how they would put a crossover on a stream, so I don't see a problem with that as the pile driving. I think that would be more work and more turning up needed. Any more questions, Jim?
Yeah, oh, yes, yeah. So that, does that cover, the question I have is that I did not feel competent to evaluate the consultant's report. I actually understand I did understand the issue we just discussed somewhat. Is there anything else of import that we're disagreeing with, or we need to make a stipulation about in the report, or are there other things that relate to the construction, if it be constructed?
and I think, but just can I ask a clarification, Mr. Hornsby? I think by consultant report, you're referring to the memo from the circuit rider, Mr. Poissant. Is that correct?
And also referring to an unseen memo from you.
My suggested condition language, which frankly, I think Mr. Brandt covered all the conditions that I had talked about.
Okay, fine. Did he?
Uh,
Yeah, okay, fine. That's fine with me.
But so the other things in Mr. Poissant's memo, and Mr. Kenny, you can correct me when I'm wrong here, but I think he noted that the intermittent stream crossings would have to meet the stream crossing standards, and we would do that. Those crossings would be at 1.2 time full bank width, so we would comply with the stream crossing standards there. And I think those, and then he did talk about the pile supported, and then what that would mean. But again, I think there was some confusion about the fact that even though we're proposing a boardwalk, a punch-in that technically has an alteration of 525 square feet, we're mitigating an additional 700 square feet within the PPW.
Right, I understood, because you're making the path narrower.
Yep.
Okay.
I
would
just
like-
ask a clarification, Paul,
Go ahead.
on the stream crossing standards. I think one of your notes said that only applies to a perennial stream.
I was incorrect when I wrote that. It does
Oh.
also apply to intermittent, which is what
okay.
we're crossing.
So you'll comply with those standards.
Yes.
Fine. If it be built, yes. Okay, am I back on again?
Yes, go ahead, Jim.
Okay. I would like now to go, that covers the construction and all that stuff. I think it might. And I do have one comment on the construction, and I was very pleased to see the photos of the America Youth Corps and young people working on the obviously different trails in your book. Because we had a booklet that the general audience hasn't seen. My concern as I read that, as I looked at it, was one of the things, we're teaching them a bunch of stuff about the forest and bioreserve and so forth. We're also teaching them that it's okay to run motorcycles through it. And I think the issue that I have is quite simple. I don't think there's a chance, I think there's a good chance that the cycles will not follow the trail, that they will use the old trails and the new trail, and they will continue to go everywhere they want, everywhere they choose. Now, I understand there is a regulation, and Paul, I won't bother to give you the number. I've got it here because Paul gave it to me. But it's not a law. It's a DCR regulation that says that motorcycles, meaning all things with motors, or ATVs and so forth, are actually, I'm not sure about it. I think ATVs are not okay in our bioreserve, but correct me if I'm wrong. And I don't think we should allow it. And that's basically it. And there are a couple reasons not to allow, but the overwhelming reason not to allow is because the bioreserve is a bioreserve. We're not dealing with a state park here, although it's technically one. We're not dealing with some place that is constructed for motorcycles to run. We are dealing with an area now 16,000 plus acres gathered together in the middle of an urban area for biodiversity. That's the reason for the southeastern Massachusetts bioreserve, which touches, I think, 6 towns. And motorcycles and heavy use are just not part of it. They actually destroy. And this problem has erupted in the last year or two, in part because of COVID, but in part because the bioreserve is known. People have time. They ride motorcycles. And I think we should do everything we can to limit. Now, I make several other suggestions, which you're probably going to turn down, and they probably may well be beyond the realm of this committee, except maybe our role is to limit motorcycles. And so I would suggest a fee for doing it. I would suggest that each motorcycle be registered on entrance. I'd also, by the way, move the parking lot right to the main place there on Holland Road, so that everything would be visible. People could be checked in easily. Now, maybe they're checked in easily now. You say, I don't ride. I do have a couple of questions. Having said that I think they are absolutely, it's kind of like oil and water. They just don't mix. I'd ask the chief ranger, and by the way, I think some of the rangers there are very good. Have the people actually paid fines this year or late last year? And if so, do you know how many?
Is that a question to Steve?
Yeah, that's for Steve.
Yeah, he was very soft-spoken. Can somebody just repeat that question a little louder for me?
Wow, I'm going as loud as I can. I'll go louder. Can
I
you hear me
understand.
now?
I understand.
Okay. Has he ever collected any fines in the last year?
That is probably under the purview of the environmental police, so I would defer that question to them. As for me, I can issue some fines, and I have not issued any fines in that regards. But it's not to say that fines have not been issued, but I don't believe that is a matter of public record either.
It's not? If I run a red light and I get stopped and I pay my fine, it's a public record. Yes?
I would defer to the courts on that, but I'm pretty sure that what I just said is fairly true.
It's probably true.
I could always stand corrected.
Perhaps it should be a public record. And, has anyone, one of the issues is noise. And you know that. And some of these things are really loud as well. However, the major issue is destruction. And there we are. Are any of those things I read off, Paul Janegy, are they things that you would do, that you would accept as a stipulation of some way or an agreement?
So I think the things that you went to toward the end included things like banning off-highway motorcycles from the state forest.
Well, that would be one, yeah. Yeah.
And that is certainly not something that I would accept. It's not a decision I can make. And I think a number of the things that you mentioned, and I think we're at the point in the hearing where we do need to be kind of clear about this. I appreciate the advocacy. I appreciate the opinion. I appreciate the point of view, but none of that is the purview of the Conservation Commission or the notice of intent that's in front of the Conservation Commission today. That is what we're here for.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, right. I thought you'd say that, and you may be right, or you may be wrong, but that's where we are. I think that probably concludes, unless if I have anything after public input, I'll add it, but thank you.
Well, Jim, just to let you know, we did research a lot of avenues on this, and we did contact legal. And if we did vote this down, they would appeal it. And that'd probably last maybe 30 days, 60 days. And we would probably lose our conditions we could put in. So it's best that we concentrate here on getting the right conditions.
I didn't say how I was going to vote. I simply.
No, I understand. I just want to let you know that.
I'd like to, fine. Fine.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point. Absolutely.
Okay, some of the, we'll call on.
Could I ask a question, Mr. Chairman? Just one thing
Sure.
that I had forgot to ask. On the trails that are being discontinued, is there any work that gets done to try and, well, I think you answered this last time, to block them from further use? You're going to put some kind of a structure saying discontinued trail, don't pass?
So-
Does anything get done to the trail itself to sort of restore it to its less devastated condition?
So generally, and the NOI includes a sort of BMP document on our trail closures. It's a combination. We would generally do something like drop some trees to close out the sidelines and provide a barrier to the trail. Also include some signage. And then we would probably also try to drag some other large woody debris onto the trail tread itself. Given the length of the trail that we're trying to close, the next thing would actually be to begin to scarify the soil in some areas to allow the natural seed source to be able to take better hold. We could do that at sort of the intersections or beginnings or entrances of the trail. I don't think it's feasible to do that on the entire length of the trail. But
Why wouldn't it be feasible to scarify the whole length of it? That's just going over it with a big rake. Get a big guy with a big rake.
Because I think we're talking about something like 2 miles.
Maybe Jim and I could go out and do it.
Yeah.
Oh, by the
Maybe-
way, when you block the trail, maybe you could use a tree that's already down.
We can, yeah. I mean, it's more effective to drop a tree, frankly. But if you want us to restrict ourselves to downed woody debris, we can do that as well.
That would be my thought.
Alrighty, Jim, do you have any questions being a new member? Not to put you on the spot. Didn't want to leave you out.
I just want to, going back to something they said earlier concerning violations. I guess there are fines. What if someone is a continuous problem out there? Can you ban these people from using these trails?
Yes. So our first role that we try to do, as always, is educate. 95% of the people want to do the right thing. So we try to interact with them. We try to educate them. If that doesn't work, then we move to the next step, which is enforcement via a fine, written warning, something to that effect. If that doesn't work, then DCR can issue a ban. And the ban is for 1 calendar year, and that is administered by the commissioner.
Thank you. I'm all set.
Alrighty. Chris, do you have any input?
Yeah, I just have a few quick questions and then a comment. So this question might be for Jasana or Chase. So I was sworn in on Thursday and I really looked at your study very quickly. So I'm assuming that when you did the analysis of the BVW, it included testing for hydric soils, oxidized rhizospheres, and as such?
Yes, we did do soil vegetation hydrology, like a standard delineation.
Okay, good, thank you. Paul, so you said that these trails that you're looking to expand are existing trails. Are they all unauthorized or authorized trails that are existing?
I would need to triple check here. Most of them are existing authorized trails that appear on the bioreserve map, including the trail that goes through the wetland resource area right now. There are, I think, there's a couple of sections. There's one section of trail that's not currently authorized that we're looking to authorize, and then there's a couple of just connectors that we're looking to make. None of those, I believe, are in wetland resource area. And then the one that we're proposing to close is a non-authorized trail.
Okay. So one of the things that was mentioned about sediment control, because it's a big issue. Are you familiar with Rattlesnake Brook, that area downstream towards 24? And that's open to OHVs. So you know what do you know what that area looks like? Because it's pretty much overridden. There's a lot of sedimentation into Rattlesnake Brook. There's been nothing with respect to trail maintenance in that area. Rattlesnake Brook, the city has done some extensive work on the Narrows area to help reintroduce
Fish,
can't think,
yeah.
I can't think of it. What type of fish they are? Herring. But there's significant sediment loading into Rattlesnake Brook from the dirt bike trails, whether authorized or unauthorized, that go right along that ridge. I have not seen in many, many years any maintenance to that, and that erosion continues. My concern is that the same thing is going to happen with this area, because let's face it, it's a moot point. They're everywhere. They're on my private dirt bikes, are on my private property. I sent some images out to the members of the commission just prior to the meeting. I apologize again, I'm just trying to come up to speed. In areas that have been on all sides of Copacut Hill that have been torn up by dirt bikes. And included in those pictures are images of my wife and a friend holding eastern box turtle juveniles, eastern box turtle adults. Now, it really comes down to enforcement, Paul. It doesn't have much to do with this existing trail that you're looking to expand. It really comes down to enforcement. And I live, just for the record purposes of full disclosure, I live out here. And I know the state forest intimately. I'm a trail runner. I see the damage that's done on a consistent basis. I would argue that the number of unauthorized trails exceed the number of authorized trails. And again, I know the area intimately. And I see, just for a quick question in terms of management, it's because it says, however well designed and maintained, trails protect the interest of act by serving to avoid minimize. Basically, you take these people and you put them in a small area and their impacts. But the unauthorized trails, there's just, and again, there's nothing wrong with the proposal. It really comes down to enforcement. There is very little. And I know that it's difficult, Steve, because of the size of the area, the size of the bioreserve. It's 13,000 acres. It is, the resources, human resources are limited. EPOs are down by 2 or 3 EPOs in this area due to injury and other things. But my concern is that with the new trails that you're intending to add, they are in proximity to vernal ponds and potential vernal ponds. My concern is that those unauthorized trails will then impact those vernal ponds, because we know that with vernal ponds, sedimentation, water clarity is extremely important. And I'm concerned that without enforcement, we'll get unauthorized trails into the vernal pond areas, which I've seen all over the state forests, whether they be the vernal ponds adjacent to the Mother's Brook Loop. If you go down, it's happening in many, many places. And I have concerns about that. I respect in honor, multi-use is multi-use. And I respect people's right to ride OHVs and dirt bikes and recreate. I certainly agree with that. And I found the report to be pretty comprehensive. And I understand the proposal, but we're not replacing what was taken. In my opinion, we're adding to what the OHV riders have taken from us. We hike the trails. We have to step off the single tracks. And I know Mr. Hornsby at the last meeting, as I reviewed the minutes, had some concerns about hiker dirt bike interaction. And I can say it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And it's not on the authorized trails, it's on the unauthorized trails. So I know that doesn't have anything to you, Paul. And I know, Steve, how challenging and difficult your job is with the number of acres that are out there and the limited resources that we have. My opinion is that adding additional trails, we're not, and closing off trails and allowing them to naturalize, that takes, if we're not going to scrape the soil, we're talking years and years and years and years to introduce nomadic species, and then on we go from there. So, and I don't think that the riders are honestly going to stop using the trails that you close. They bring chainsaws out here to reopen the trails when trees fall. And they put enormous effort into doing that. And when I run into people out here in unauthorized areas, they're not kids, they're grown men, grown women, they're adults. They pass the signs, they know they're there. So that would be, I'm really concerned about the enforcement. And I think that with some limited enforcement, and Steve, you might be able to help here, with some limited enforcement, and I mean some limited sting operations, and I would like to see this put in. If you involved the Fall River Environmental Police, DCR Ranger Services, and Mass Environmental Police, and we could get DCR to approve the overtime, then what it allow us to do is, and we know, in my role in enforcement is we all you have to do is 1 or 2 days, Saturdays or Sundays, when the issue, when it's most critical. I mean, they're everywhere out here on a Saturday, Sunday. If on a Saturday or Sunday you went out and in a number of areas, and I'd be glad to provide locations, and as Steve said, and I agree with him, provide education to individuals that are in violation of the rules. Then the second time around, write citations. If you do that once or twice, maybe 3 times, then it's simply because they have a very strong communication network, the OHV riders. Then it would be a matter of just maintaining that once a year, twice a year, being a visible presence. But right now, what goes on out here, and again, I live out here, they're on my property, So those are my concerns. I understand the expansion of the trails. It really comes down to enforcement and then trail management. Paul, do you know when the last time they did any type of trail management out here with the existing trails that they have, whether it would be to redo puncheons or anything like that?
So we did some work in 2015, and I think we've done 3 years of some work out there. We did some improvements on the Landon Hill Path area, rebuilt some puncheons and also some turnpike areas there. We did attempt to do some closures in the Rattlesnake Brick area back in 2014, 2015, something like that. I will agree with you. That is a tough area there.
It's very discouraging to see.
Understood. That's a very different condition than what we're talking about here and the work.
I agree. The topography is much different. I completely agree.
And I think the one comment, I really appreciate your perspective. I know you live here, anyway, I do not, so I apologize. But one thing I will say is, the effort here is to provide an additional authorized riding loop with the goal of being able to provide that education, being able to then tell riders, here's where you can ride, okay? Stick to that. And we've gone to some effort here to provide you with an additional loop here if that's what you want. But, stay on the authorized trails.
I understand. I just, again, I think it comes down to enforcement, and I would like to see a multi-agency effort. And again, it doesn't have to be every weekend, once or twice a year, and then some spot checks. Because my gut tells me there have not been a lot of citations written. Particularly if you look at the Massachusetts environmental police officers in the area they have to cover. I think, Steve, you may know this is Charlie 7, this area.
Actually,
Charlie 5.
it is on the border of the Charlie 7 and the Mike 4.
Mike
With
4.
that said, just to address some of your previous comments real quick, is just we've already conducted stings, coordinated stings with Mass Environmental Police. They do this, throughout the summer.
How often,
actually,
Steve?
throughout the year. I would defer to them to get the specifics, since this is public record. So I don't want to say a
Right.
number without knowing exactly what that number is.
Do you know if any of Steve have been conducted off season?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
I can tell you on what we consider our shoulder season, which I would call particularly between January and when we get our seasonals on in May. I've personally been out there.
I know you have. I've seen
towards the evening, and to discourage this type of activity. And DCR has actually spent some overtime. So it's not just me, but our other rangers get out there other rangers and other staff are out there, to interact with the public, to educate them on this and hopefully prevent and discourage this type of activity.
Right. So Steve, are there any, when you run your operations, is that all done within the area that's authorized for OHVs, or is it done outside? Like, for instance, the Copacut Hill area, East Line Trail, Woodchuck Trail. Is there any work done out there?
We cover the entire park when we do the enforcement issues.
Right, but these are areas on the city side outside the park.
I guess I'm missing your question.
Well, no, for instance, the Copacut Hill area.
Right, so if it's
that.
not DCR property, our rangers wouldn't be involved.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. That makes sense. Thank you.
Right. So, obviously these are important issues, and I really appreciate the comments and the perspective and highlighting the importance of it relative to the NOI and relative to conditions that we could accept. I think the one condition around this that we could accept is to make a report back to you in a year to include information about how many enforcement actions were there, how many, fine citations were issued, and things like that. So,
Paul, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, and how it's going and recommendations and the whole thing, to reevaluate the whole thing. Because that's really important. But we have, I don't know if Mr. Boyle is true, but we have other citizens perhaps that have some input to offer.
Could I just say one thing, Mr. Chairman, just sort of
Sure.
thinking out loud? When we're looking at a notice of intent like this and we're deliberating to reach a decision, I guess one of the decisions that the commission can make is we approve the project as is. The general conditions are in the NOI or in the order of conditions, and go ahead and do your project. Or the other thing that we can sometimes do is say, okay, you can do this project, but we need some special conditions. And typically, I believe the theory is that only with the imposition of those special conditions can the resources that we're protecting be adequately protected. And as Mr. Boyle suggesting that human nature being what it is, and folks going out there with chainsaws to open up their own paths,
Yes.
are we hearing that the conditions that the proponent is prepared to accept are not going to be adequate to protect the resource? And if that's the case, then how can we approve it with conditions that can't be satisfied? And they can't be satisfied perhaps because the staffing is just not adequate to monitor the situation correctly.
Right.
I do see your point there, but
Is there a response?
Well,
There's no
I would
response
just-
from me.
I would just like to say that I know how hard the DCR rangers work and the mass EPOs and how thinly they're spread. So, I mean, and Steve, please don't infer this as anything negative with respect to your enforcement activities and your work. We've known each other some time, and I know the work you do, and I respect the work you do. I just look at the evidence before me, that's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. I think we have at least one person who wants.
Yeah, I was
to go
gonna,
outside
if you're
who
done,
wants
I was
to
gonna
speak.
open it up to public input.
Yep.
Okay. Susan Lee, I see you're wanted to have some input.
Yes, thank you very much. So my concerns are similar to the concerns that were just expressed about enforcement. I went out to the parking lot in Freetown State Forest. It's designated for motorcycles, looked at the trails that go directly off that parking lot that are designated as no motorized vehicles. They're very clearly marked. It's not a question of a lack of signage. There's lots of signage, no motorized vehicles, but all of those trails have had a lot of motorcycle use, and you can tell because of the degradation to the trail. I'm referring specifically to the Whitetail Loop, which is designated for non-motorized use only, and also the CCC Loop, also designated non-motorized use only. Both those trails are seriously degraded from motorcycle use. And you know, there's no question about it. I mean, you don't have to wait a year to monitor things. You just go out there and look for yourselves. You'll see the trails are seriously degraded. Not only the trails that were meant to be hiker or runner trails, but also there's off-trail damage where the motorcycles have gone off the trail, created a new trail through the woods en route to some sort of rocky structure. And this was especially off Bell Rock Road, you know, so I followed one of those trails, and it goes straight up kind of some of the rocks that are out there, you know, up and around and about, creating huge damage in the forest. You don't need to wait to see this. You could just go out and look for yourselves that there's no respect for those signs. And it isn't just one motorcycle. You know, this is repeated damage on these trails. Now, I understand that the purpose of this proposal is to expand recreational use in the forest while protecting wildlife. But at the moment, what's happening is motorcycle use is pushing out the use of hikers, because it's much harder to hike on a trail that has been seriously damaged by motorcycle use. Plus, it's dangerous. You know, and just say nothing of not very peaceful because of all the noise. So, you know, the motorcycles have already expanded their use. They've already expanded their use. And their expansion is driving out other uses, especially the use of the hikers. Now, in terms of protecting the wildlife, the turtles were mentioned earlier. I don't see where there's any hope for the poor turtles. You know, if you're hiking on a trail or you're running, you're going slower than a motorcycle goes. If there's a turtle on the trail, you know, you have a much better chance of seeing that turtle and avoiding it. A motorcycle, you know, going so quickly, you know, the turtles don't stand a chance here. So I really think what's happening here is that the entire forest is being turned over to motorcycle usage, and motorcycle usage that degrades the natural environment, that can't help but injure the wildlife there. So I really think the proposal is the exact opposite of the whole purpose of the bioreserve. And I don't think I introduced myself. I'm Susan Lee from 336 Maple Street in New Bedford. And I have used the forest for hiking purposes, but I'm increasingly unwilling to do that because I think not only is it difficult and unpleasant, but it's a safety hazard. And I think there are other hikers that would have exactly the same reaction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else out there with citizen input? Am I missing anybody? All righty. So can I have a a motion to close the hearing, public hearing on this matter?
No.
No, we
Wait a
closed,
minute, what does that mean?
we closed the public meeting, we're closing the meeting to the hearing, so no more evidence and outside interest comes in, and
Okay.
then we'll go to taking a vote.
Well, I would like us to be able to talk as a commission about what is going to be on the vote.
Yeah, absolutely. That, after you close the hearing, then you deliberate. You
Yeah.
can talk amongst yourselves.
Okay,
and
fine. I
discuss.
just didn't want to,
It's just closing a public hearing. We'll still be,
Fine.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
can I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Jim,
Aye.
Andy,
Aye.
Louis,
Aye.
John, aye. Vote passes. All right, on to the deliberating. I think the only thing left, I don't know, Bill, if you have anything else to add, is probably just to read the order of conditions that we want to put
Right.
in, right?
Right.
Well, I think you've got to discuss, number one, do you want to issue an order of conditions? And I think if you've decided that there are no conditions which would make it possible to protect the resources that you're charged with protecting, then the vote would be, no, we're not going to issue an order of conditions. On the other hand, you might entertain a motion to issue an order of conditions subject to certain special conditions that you would add. And I know that just as a practical matter, we've discussed with the proponents, you guys have discussed with the proponents a lot of different conditions. And I know that Mr. Janegy emailed late today some proposed conditions. And it's tough in this format to come up with what those might be precisely and to get the language ironed out precisely. So I suppose one thing you might do is to delegate to him and to me the responsibility of coming up with a final version of special conditions that I think reflects the will of the board and that he thinks reflects his client's intention, and then bring it back to you for an up or down vote, and maybe even have a special meeting. We don't want to delay the process, but I just think mechanically it might be better to have him and me be delegated to put that thing together. But that's if you decide to go forward and issue an order at all. So that's just my sense of procedurally where you're at.
I would like to get the conditions right. That doesn't sound like a bad option. How does the board
Yeah. I
view
agree.
that?
I'd be happy with Bill taking over that portion.
I support that. I agree.
Okay. Paul, that would be fine with you?
Yep.
Okay, so can I have a motion that Bill Kenny and Paul put the NOI conditions together, and we'll have a special meeting and vote on that?
Good
So
enough.
just procedurally, I'm sorry, I know you asked for a motion
Go
and
ahead.
I'm interrupting.
Okay, go ahead.
So that would then hold off on issuing at least the special conditions. I mean, so would you vote tonight to issue an order of conditions subject to the final special conditions?
Yes,
And then we would bring the special conditions back that Bill and I had discussed and agreed on, and you would vote on that. Is that correct?
correct.
If at that time, Bill and I couldn't agree over whether the I should be dotted or not, I mean, I guess I just procedurally, that sounds fine to me. It sounds like the reasonable way to do it. Sounds like the way to get the wording right on the conditions. I just don't want, again, have some wrench thrown in at a later date. But again, I guess the public hearing is closed here, so
Well, that's all right.
Okay.
We want to solve this. We don't want to hang in on procedure.
Because as soon as
Without that.
we get the NOI and conditions, we can take a quick vote. Won't hold it up at all.
Oh, I think the other thing, Mr. Chairman, that I think is important is, and I realize that we probably cannot force DCR to ban motorcycles. Okay.
No, we
I
can't.
recognize that. Okay, I really do. I would like to offer a motion, and I think I don't know if I should place it on the agenda tonight or place it on for next month's meeting, simply stating our opposition to motorcycles in the bioreserve. And we could state that clearly and send it to the various owners and managers of the 4 parts or so of the bioreserve, and most of which do not have motorcycles. I believe that 5,000 acres have, and the rest don't. Just so that we have our opposition clear. And I think this may, in fact, encourage motorcycle riders to toe the line a little bit.
Okay.
Could you support that?
John?
Well, fine. I don't
Go ahead,
want to make. Can I make it tonight? I can't make it
No,
right
no,
now.
no.
I can't make it right now, and it hasn't been on the agenda. You see.
Yeah,
That's why
we'll look at that, putting it
yeah.
on the agenda down the road.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. That might help me in my voting.
Okay. Andy?
John, I apologize, but I've been holding my lip for a little bit. I don't understand what a lot of this has anything to do with a vote. I mean, a lot of it, I understand. I mean, I don't like motorcycles on the trail, but realistically, we have no control over it. Let's get the darn vote over with.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So the motion now, Bill, we're going to be, forget the language we were using there. What was that, Bill?
Well, the thought was that you would vote to issue an order of conditions and authorize me and Paul to come up with the final language for special conditions, which would be brought to the board. And upon approval of the special conditions, the order would be issued with those conditions.
Okay. All right. So can I have a motion?
And of course, you know, keep in mind, Jim, that the conditions that Paul and I are going to put together will not include a paragraph that says no motorcycles allowed. Okay.
I understand that. What I was asking for would be a vote of this commission supporting or just simply stating our objection.
But if we don't object it, how can we do that?
You can make a resolution, a statement of your
It will have
feelings
an
anytime, I
effect.
guess.
It possibly would have an effect in the future. If, for example, if the damage got out of control, for example. I think
Jim, as I tried to suggest before, you know, your other option is to make a determination that there are no conditions that are enforceable that could be attached to this order that would protect the resources that you're charged with protecting, in which case you would decline to issue an order of conditions. That's your other option.
Except my understanding is that the folks that Paul and his friends and the boss and DCR could go to court and put it through.
Well, as an attorney, I'm not as scared of court.
All right.
It's just my opinion. But yeah, sure, they could appeal. If you decline to issue an order, I presume they could appeal that to a regional office in Lakeville, right?
In fact, if you voted not to issue an order, we would appeal the decision to DEP, and then you would not have the chance to add any conditions.
Right.
That's the risk we take. So
well, of course, we wouldn't
I-
have the opportunity to impose conditions, but I presume Lakeville would have the opportunity.
So one other question. I think there's a timing issue with when the commission has to issue the order. has to issue the final language in the order. I think it's a 21-day period. Is that correct, Bill? Or
I believe 21 days from the close of the hearing. Is that what you're thinking?
I think that's true. Christine, is that? Yeah, or Chase.
Of course,
Yeah.
I suppose by agreement of the parties, they could make it 22 days. But, I think it's fair to say that if the vote is that Paul and I have to get together and put this thing together, we're not going to let any grass grow under it. We want to get it done.
Right.
Yeah, okay. All righty, so let me see if I can get a motion for issue of order conditions with Paul and Bill hashing out the NOI conditions, special conditions. Once those special conditions are approved by the board, we'll add those to the order conditions. We'll have this wrapped up in 21 days. Can I have a motion?
Make that motion.
Second? Okay, roll call vote. Jim?
Pass for now. How many voting members do we have?
We have 4 tonight.
I believe, just as a matter of clarification, I don't think Mr. Ferrera can be a voting member because he wasn't present for the initial hearing for this at the last meeting.
If I'm right, I think he joined the opening of the hearing, but then dropped off.
Correct.
So
What's
does
the
that make
ruling on
sense?
that?
Yeah,
Paul,
I
did you
believe
hear
Christine's
most?
right. I think it's only the 3.
3? Okay. Andy?
Aye.
John, aye. Is that enough votes members to vote?
I have not voted yet.
You
No.
need, you
I
need
thought
another, you
yeah.
need to call the roll for the 3rd vote.
Okay,
Call the roll.
okay. All right, Jim?
No.
Andy?
Aye.
Okay, Lewis wasn't here. John, aye. So it's 2-1 on the vote. So
I believe the motion passes.
passes. Okay, just want to make sure that was a majority enough but that would be a majority, so yes.
I had been
Okay.
told that it took a majority of the committee to pass the,
Well, that was the committee that were here at the meeting. The new members can't vote on it.
That's correct. But my understanding from several months ago when we had a sick member and there was vacancy and so forth was that you needed a majority of 5. You needed 3 out of 5, and you needed the 3 regardless. I'm not, if it's 2-1, it's 2-1. And it passes. I would trust both of you to double check it, and there we are.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the expert here, but I think, you had the quorum to open the hearing. You opened the hearing. I think actually Mr. Ferrera was here when the hearing was open, so I actually think he may be eligible to vote. Somebody else was on the screen when we opened the hearing. So I could be wrong about that, and he can correct me if I'm wrong. But then, so you had and then you had a quorum to open the hearing. We held the hearing. At this point, you feel you have 3 voting members on the hearing. It would just be a majority of the voting members, and the motion would pass.
Well, that's Robert's rules, but I believe we have a special rule.
What? Since when?
No, that's the majority, Jim. Vote passes.
Okay, that's your decision.
Okay,
I'm not going to go to court, but if I do, I'll hire Mr. Kenny.
Thanks, but no thanks.
all right. Well, thank you. Paul and Bill, get together and squash this thing out and we'll move on.
Hey,
Paul,
thanks very much.
Paul, did I mention I'm going to be away for the next 2 months?
Oh, great. Thanks, Mr. Kenny.
Good.
I have your cell phone, so I think we're all good.
Okay.
Well,
I appreciate the commission's time and everybody's opinion. I know this is tough, but I really appreciate your work.
I just want to thank Paul, Chase, Chisana, and Steve. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That was
I
very
know it's been a
helpful.
process, so.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, folks.
Now, before we get much further, they're going to come back with an agreement, and we're going to vote to approve it, probably. Are the two new members going to be able to vote on that?
I think we just, well,
I think so, because it's.
yeah, Bill, they would be
talking
able to vote on that, would they?
I
Let's
think
see.
we need to check
Uh,
that.
We may have to ask Corporation
The
Council for
corporation?
ruling on that. It's getting a little bit attenuated for,
Okay, I'm not gonna rush it, but okay. I just
Okay.
didn't want to get into a long discussion next time, or tonight either.
All right. Okay. Let's move on to new business then. We have a request for certificate of compliance, file number SE-24-474. Owner applicant is Elizabeth Daphne. Project location is 26 Shannon Street. Assessor's map is D-9-92. Applicant requests a certificate of compliance for completion of work authorized in the order conditions issued April 21st, 2005.
and Mr. Chairman, I can report on two things in that regard. First, I think their name is Delphine,
Delphini, okay.
Delphine, and I think Mr. Campaverde's name is Campaverde, by the way.
Yes, that's
Just-
correct.
Just to backtrack, because we may run into his name again. On this particular file for Shannon, 26 Shannon Street, I visited the site, and I can confirm that the conditions that they were required to abide by have all been abidden by. Well, they're in compliance, and they're entitled to a certificate of compliance, and I recommend that you issue one.
Okay, now on this, all members can vote on this?
Yes,
Okay, so can I have a motion to order a certificate of compliance?
I'll make that motion.
Seconded.
Okay, roll call vote. Jim?
Aye,
Andy?
Aye.
Louis?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
John, aye. Motion passes 8-0. Next, file number SE-24-0691 is owner applicant Laura Ernest, Massachusetts Electric Company. Project location is Remington Street, Hathaway Street. Assessor's map is S22-0-19 and 0-20. Applicant is requesting certificate of compliance for completion of work authorized in the order of conditions issued March 24th, 2017.
yeah, Mr. Chairman, you've probably all seen the work that was performed under this order. If you
Yeah,
remember where the old Slade's Ferry Bridge was at the end of Remington Street, you see the new
Yeah.
high wires across the river. That's what this was all about. And they have complied with the requirements that were imposed when the order was issued. So I recommend that you issue a certificate of compliance.
can I have a motion to issue a certificate of compliance?
yes, so move.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, roll call vote. Jim?
Aye,
Andy?
Aye.
Louis?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
John, aye. Measure passes 8-0. Next is file number
Aye.
SE-24-0672. Owner applicant is Gary S. Monroe, Liberty Utilities. Project location, Brightman Street Bridge. Assessor's map is S-21-NA, Mass Road right-of-way. Applicant requests a certificate of compliance for completion of work authorized in the order of conditions issued November 2nd, 2015.
Again, Mr. Chairman, this was utility work by Liberty Utilities in the Brightman Street Bridge area. I have received the proper request for a certificate of compliance. They are in compliance with the conditions that were imposed, and I recommend that you issue the certificate.
Okay, can I have a motion to issue a certificate of compliance?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, roll call vote. Jim,
aye,
Andy,
Aye.
Louis,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
John, aye. Measure passes 8-0. Next is a request of issue of amended orders of conditions. Owner applicant is TM Crawley and Associates. Project location, 64 Stevens Street. Assessor's map is E-27-004.
Mr. Chairman, this came before the commission on a request for the owner of the property to amend its order of conditions. And there subsequently ensued a long series of negotiations between the city and an abutter to this property and this owner. The issue had to do basically with drainage of stormwater and such from this site onto the adjoining property. And the issue was, how is that runoff going to be handled? We gave the parties an opportunity to work this out between them, but the abutters to work it out between them. They've done that. They've submitted a new plan, which would constitute the necessary filings to have us issue an amended order. And the only thing that we're waiting for is a narrative written agreement between the parties that would particularly address the issue of who's going to maintain the drainage structure that's been created. And they're waiting for one signature on it. And as soon as we have it, we can put this one to sleep. But in the meantime, could we please table it to the next meeting?
Sure. Can I have a motion to table this till the next meeting?
I'll make
But
that.
by the way, what is the date of that meeting, Christine?
That'll be July 12th, and it will be in person.
Okay. Oh, that's right. This is our last Zoom meeting, hopefully forever and ever.
July
Correct.
12th.
So can I have a motion to table this to
Make it.
July 12th? Okay. Second, we got a second too?
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote. Jim,
Aye.
Andy,
Aye.
Louis? Louis? Oh, you're on mute. Aye. Okay. Chris,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
John, aye. Vote passes 8-0. Next is a notice of intent, NO file number SE-24. We don't have a complete NOI number on that, Christine?
Correct. We have not gotten the state issued number yet, so we can discuss the project, but you cannot take a vote on it tonight.
Okay, all righty. So we'll discuss it. Its owner applicant is Quintel Investment LLC. The project location is 3820 North Main Street. Assessor's map is X-03-0010. Filed by SciTech Civil Engineer and Civil Environmental Consultant, Inc. on behalf of applicant Quintel Investment LLC for construction of a 3-unit residential building with associated grading, utilities. The purpose activity falls within the 100-foot buffer zone bordering vegetated wetland. Erosion control barrier is proposed along the work limits. Any discussion on that, or do you want to wait till we get the number?
I don't see
John,
any reason why we can't go ahead and have the hearing,
Okay.
open the hearing and let
All
the
right.
proponent make their pitch.
Oh, you're here, Dan. Okay.
I am here. I've been sitting listening the whole night. I think this is the longest meeting of all time.
Oh, yeah.
I should not have skipped lunch.
Oh,
Before we get started, I'd like to welcome Mr. Boyle and Mr. Cusick. I know the two of them, and I think they will serve this commission and the city very respectfully, and I'm looking forward to working with you guys
Thanks,
as
Dan.
we move forward. This is a petition, as the chairman stated, regarding 3820 North Main Street. It's a property as you're heading up North Main Street, just before the Steep Brook condominiums along the west side of North Main. I'll share my screen now, and I'm assuming you can all see it. So as I was stating, as we head north up North Main Street, to the north of us, we have an existing condominium, Steep Brook condominiums. And then to the south of us, we have an existing commercial building, which is occupied by a dance studio and a theatrical performing arts center. This is a property owned by Quintel Investments LLC, who the managing member is Dan Quintel, which some of you may know. This was a project that we had permitted a few years ago through this board and through the Zoning Board of Appeals for a commercial development. And I'll pull that plan up for you quickly. This plan was approved by the commission a number of years ago with an order of conditions that has since expired. And through that filing permitted this 3,000 square foot commercial building, a large parking area, wetland alteration area, and 2 separate wetland replication zones. The applicant came back to me maybe about a year or so ago and wanted to move more in in a manner that would be more in keeping with the surrounding areas, which would have been a multifamily structure. So what we did was we went back to the drawing board and proposed a 3-unit building, went back to the Zoning Board of Appeals, received permission from them with the granting of a variance allowing this use. So as we look at the property up on North Main Street, which sits up high, we have a pocket of upland that sits at the northeast corner of the property and then drops off to a bordering vegetated wetland system that runs along the rail line. And it's actually encompassed by a 75-foot oil and gas easement that you see shown on this plan as well. So there are some gas lines that run through this BVW area. With this new proposal, we have been able to eliminate the need for any wetland alteration, eliminate the need for any wetland replication. And what we've done is constructed this in a manner where we will have a lower area to the back of these buildings that will allow for parking into these 3 garage spaces, as well as in front, like a walkout basement. So that way we could minimize the amount of fill required to do this. As we enter the property, we've also initiated a 2-to-1 riprap slope, and then a long stretch of retaining wall, again, so that we could minimize the alteration in the buffer zone and keep our entire project outside of the BVW where it had previously been allowed. Although we are not required to meet stormwater management guidelines for the size of this project, we have proposed the installation of a storm scepter catch basin to the rear of the property, which would capture runoff from the paved surface and then discharge it through a flared end section out to this riprap area before it continues down to a head wall about 100 feet north before passing under the rail line. Additionally, with regards to stormwater management, we have proposed the installation of a roof drain infiltration system that will sit below the parking lot above existing grade, and that will collect all of the roof runoff. And for a storm of 3.4 inches of rain, which is about a 2 to 5 year storm, and it's the standard that site plan review and community utilities usually asks us to meet, we propose that system to be constructed here and collect all of the roof runoff generated from the site. Again, this is a highly degraded BVW where we have buried gas and oil lines that you can see through this flat area. That's where the BVW begins, and we have this upland portion of the corner, and then it starts to drop down. You can see how steep these contours get. So again, it's a rather straightforward buffer zone activity. All work is in the buffer zone, no BVW alteration that had previously been permitted under the previous order. If you have any specific questions regarding any of the items, I'd be more than glad to answer them.
And I'm assuming they'll put silt fencing up when they work on this project?
Yep, as you see here, we have a dark bold line, the
Okay.
dashed line that
Yep,
wraps
I got
around
it.
the site, and that would be our erosion control barrier, which we normally use hay bales and silt fence. But however the commission wanted to condition it, we'd be more than accepting of whatever type of barrier you wanted to be used.
Now, Dan, the roof runoff, where was it's going to flow into this container? Where does it exit then? Just right into a leaching?
Right. So what happens? This system is capable. All of this roof runoff will go into this infiltration chamber system, and that's capable of holding that 3.4 inches of rain. Anything beyond that would overflow into the catch basin that's directly adjacent to it, and then out through the flared end section. So this would basically take 3.5 inches of rain off the top of any storm that would come through.
Okay.
Dan, off the top of your head, do you know how many square feet of impervious surface the project is going to create?
Off the top of my head, let me do a quick calculation, and I can.
If you don't, that's okay. You put all the mitigation in place. I mean,
Yeah, I'm going to say the building is. I mean, it looks like, between the parking and the building, they're almost about the same size. So I'm going to say about 6,000 square feet of impervious surface over a parcel. That's 43,000 square feet.
okay, great. Thank you.
Jim, any questions?
No?
Louis, any questions?
Just one, the riprap slope, that's 2-to-1, right?
That's 2-to-1. Yeah, I mean, we can normally get up to a 1-to-1 slope. We try not to do that, and where we had the room to fit in 2-to-1, we just went with it. We went with 2-to-1. If you look at the previously approved plan, we were 1-to-1 riprap slope all along that wetland edge with that plan. So we were able to flatten it out now that we've shrunk up the footprint.
Okay. And just one minor question that probably has no bearing within our purview and scope of work, but looking at the riprap slope detail, does that call for any filter fabric or not?
There should be. Let me pull up that plan.
Not that that would deter me in any way. I was just curious when I looked at it.
I only pulled up the I do not see it on the detail, but by all means, it can be made a condition. We normally would have it, but I actually don't see one called out for on this detail. That's on the second plan sheet. So if you wanted to make that a condition, we can make that revision to the plan.
Okay. It's just more of on a construction sense and less about the the wetland border.
Andy, any questions? Nope. All right. Jim, any questions?
No?
Chris, any?
No.
You know, you already had some. Okay.
Thanks.
All righty.
Mr. Chairman, if I could give some input on that.
Sure.
As you look at the plan, it's nice that this is an improvement from the plan of several years ago where they had proposed to build in wetlands and as a result proposed some replication. And so they're not doing that now. They're entirely within the buffer zone. But the new members probably not aware of this at this point, but back at the beginning of the year, this commission adopted a policy that's based on the concept that buffer zones have a function to play in making sure that the abutting wetlands perform their proper functions in the ecosystem. And because building in buffer zones had become sort of the Wild West in Fall River, and situation where we're in a buffer zone, anything goes was almost the concept. We said, we're going to pay a little bit more attention to make sure that the buffer zones are not impaired to the extent that they can't fulfill their function of helping protect the wetlands. And as part of that, we adopted a 25-foot no disturb area parallel to the wetlands delineation and 25 feet wide. So this project would impinge on that significantly. And it would also, when you take into account the dramatic slope of this land, I went out there today and it's a serious drop off from North Main Street down. There's going to be an enormous amount of fill necessary to build this project, which would totally change the character of the existing wetlands. So you have to wonder whether that's going to impede their function in a big way. So I bring that to your attention. I know that the proponents have suggested that the wetlands that are there are seriously degraded. And, I don't know that. Not that I distrust the proponents, just that I don't have that information in front of me. So one thing that the commission has adopted as a policy is if they are concerned about something like this and they want to get a second opinion or a third party opinion, they can require the proponent to do that. And we would retain somebody, get some quotes, just as we did on that case that was mentioned earlier today, and put the question to an independent expert whether there's anything about this project that would so seriously impair the proper functioning of the buffer that maybe it should be conditioned in a certain way. So I wanted to bring that to your attention, and you can make your judgment based on that.
I'll move, but I move we hire a
Yeah.
consultant.
Yeah,
May I-
we-
may-
we-
Can I make
Go
a
ahead,
comment,
man.
John?
Go ahead.
I find it a bit disheartening that not everyone is being treated equally with regards to this 25-foot no activity zone. This is a project that was going through the permitting process with the Zoning Board of Appeals while you initiated this policy. It is a policy, it is not a regulation. It has no bearing whatsoever with the courts and with the approval of any type of project or buffer zone activity. We've gone above and beyond to minimize the amount of work on this site, provide stormwater treatment with storm scepter manholes and infiltration on a site that is exempt from stormwater management as far as the Wetlands Protection Act is concerned. We're getting to a point where we now pay consultants to review things that the commission should be able to, and these reviews cost more than the work to put it before you. Frederick Street being one of them. We try not to take a hard line and just say, just act on the proposal as it's presented to you, but it's going to get to this point. We get zero review before we come to the meeting. Things just get tacked on for month after month. I honestly don't see where a project this simple requires some type of outside consultant.
Well, I got to address that. If I could interject, number one, what are you talking about the cost? How many times have you had a client come before this board in the last couple of years who's incurred some costs? I'm not aware of any at this point.
I've had
Number
multiple.
two, fairness, I would like to know who is not being treated fairly by this commission. I don't see that happening at all. And then you talk about things just get continued from month to month. You have to face the reality that this is a volunteer board and you have a staff that's not fully staffed up in City Hall, and we move things along as rapidly as we can. And I don't see anything that's been drifting month to month where there's no justification for it.
Can I finish?
Well,
Without
when you go down that path, those three topics where I have serious disagreement with,
and I
you
would,
have to
I
interject.
would like the opportunity to finish speaking on behalf of my client without being interrupted, if I may.
Go ahead, Dan.
Bill, you and I work hand in hand daily. So Frederick Street, for instance, has been belabored waiting for multiple quotes on getting this stuff reviewed. It's a single family house lot with buffer zone activity, but we're not going to discuss that project. Well, tonight, for instance, was there a peer review to go into the biopark and put in all of these trails? I see different orders that come before you. And we have provided fees for consultants. Highland Farms Phase 1, for instance, went through a rigorous review using an outside consultant. And that added a lot of time to that as well. But I just look at a couple of the items that are on the agenda tonight. How many of them had to pay for an outside consultant to get their orders put in place or reviewed anywhere along the line?
If you want me to go through the agenda, I'll answer that.
All right, well, the one that you took over an hour speaking with regards to 24/761 for the Department of Conservation and Recreation, I mean.
Nobody was paid for any consulting on that.
Exactly. And that's my question is why does a project of that size not require a peer review? When you go.
We had the circuit rider system that's designed to make free consulting services available to conservation commissions, and we took advantage of it.
For them, but not for anyone else. I mean, I can't tell the board how to vote, but it's going to get to the point where people just say, just act on it, and then we're going to go to the state, we're going to appeal, we'll win, and then you won't be able to put any conditions or even step foot on the property. It's just not a productive way of doing or administering the Wetlands Protection Act when we're dealing with buffer zone activity. That's all. However the board sees to move the project forward one way or the other, of course, we'll abide by your wishes.
Bill, could we have Andy Point look at this? Give it a second opinion?
I honestly don't know if he's available to do that. I know that he was recommended to us for that particular project by the Mass Association of Conservation Commissions. I don't know whether he routinely reviews projects, private development projects. I can find out. Absolutely ask him tomorrow.
Okay.
But the point is, the board's entitled to make a reasoned decision. If they don't have the information in front of them that they need to make that, they're entitled to get it one way or another. One way that we've found available is this procedure of having a peer review by an independent consultant at the applicant's expense, and that's done in planning, it's done in conservation, it's done in a lot of different boards. And it's not an unusual thing, and it's not been overly used. I don't think you can point to 4 of them in the last 4 years.
Are we ready for the motion again?
No, we're not in motion. All right, I don't know how the board feels on this.
John, if I may, Bill stated that I'm not providing you the information that you need to vote. I answered every question that everyone brought up. I don't know what other information I can provide to you.
No, that wasn't the point. The point was we're not in a position to make a judgment whether this total disruption of the buffer zone is going to impair its function, and its function is to support and protect the wetlands area. So I don't see where that's been addressed, and we're entitled to an independent opinion as to whether that's the case.
Alrighty. How about on this, we probably make a motion to table it to July, well, not even July 12th. Look into seeing what Andy Point, maybe we can have an expert give us opinion, but then maybe having a special meeting on this before July 12th, not to hold the project up.
You
I
can't
can call
even,
Andy. I can call Andy Point in the morning. I can get his, he'll tell me, is he available to do something like this or not? And then if he says yes, shall I ask him to do it? If he says no, what shall I do?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, you might want to just put it through that if Bill can't get Andy to review it, I think then a vote would be appropriate if you do want to send it to an outside consultant, just for timing purposes, so that maybe Bill, if we can't get that help, can get a few quotes so that someone can have this review and process before we meet again.
Sure.
just to clarify,
Sure.
this is the issue that you can't vote on tonight anyway, because we're still waiting on a state assigned number for it. So you would have to table it, I believe, to the next meeting to begin with.
Oh,
Well, the
Okay.
risk, I suppose, is that when they assign the number, sometimes on that memo, they put some other things that they want us to look into. So I don't see any reason in particular why we can't start down the path that Dan just described, in the interest of not delaying it. And maybe we'll be lucky when the number is issued, there'll be no other conditions that they want us to investigate. And so we're already ahead of the curve. If they come along and say, well, we really want you to check something else out, then we can deal with that then. I just my
Okay.
thought.
alrighty. So can we have a motion to table this to July 12th? We'll have Bill contact an independent expert to evaluate the lost words here. Wetlands.
It's to
Have a
it's to
motion?
review the notice of intent,
I'll
We're gonna
make
have a
that
motion. Okay, second.
Aye.
Okay, roll call vote. Jim,
Aye.
Andy,
Aye.
Louis,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
John, aye. So motion passes till next month. Alrighty.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Dan. Next on the report is by Conservation Chair regarding an oil leak at Cook Pond. I was contacted 2 weeks ago by Lieutenant Michael from the Fall River Fire Department, who was contacted about an oil leak. It's on actually coming from Tiverton. So he contacted Mass DEP and Rhode Island DEP. They're in a joint study. No findings have come back yet to determine where the oil is coming from or if it is oil. Rhode Island says no. Fall River is no and yes, so that's still on hold. So that's all I have to report on that. Then notifications was submitted by, wait a second. Then next is notification work submitted on behalf of New England Power Company regarding tree trimming associated with exploratory subsurface investigation within N12 and M13 transmission line. That's just something we put on file, right, Bill?
Yeah, the notifications, they're required by statute to tell us that they're just trimming trees so that it won't interfere. This is item 6 you're talking about, right?
5.
Oh, 5, report on the rail trail. Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I'm confused. That was just a,
Tree trimming by the power company. Just
well, number 5 was that the tree trimming? Oh, when you say rail trail, that's not the Alfred J. Lima Quaquechan River Rail Trail. That's the
it's
choo-choo train rail trail, South Coast Rail and all, right?
Yeah, railroad track is the usual phrase.
Okay. Yeah, they're trimming trees. We don't want the trees to get in the way of the train when
Right.
the train comes. So it's okay. Place on file.
okay. I know I was down there looking over the work that they're doing. They have erosion control, dust control into effect. Even certain areas that are Indian artifacts, they have, it doesn't include our scope, but they're even protecting that with putting layers of soil and cushion and soil so they don't get even close to it. So they're doing a really nice job down there. Do we need a motion to put that on file, Bill, or is that just?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I have a motion to put that on file?
So moved.
Second. All righty, roll call. Jim,
Aye. Aye.
Andy,
Aye.
Louis,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
John, aye. Vote passes 8-0. Can I have a motion of approval for the minutes of May 3rd?
I'll make it.
This can be only Andy
So
and
for
Jim.
move approval.
Okay, so roll call vote, then this is only Jim,
Aye.
Andy,
Aye.
John, aye. Minutes pass. No public input. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
So moved.
Okay. Can I have a roll call vote? Jim,
Aye.
aye. Okay,
Sorry,
Andy.
fell asleep there.
Aye. Yeah, yeah.
Louis,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
John, aye. Meeting is adjourned. And guys, the meeting do not normally go this long, so don't get
Well, no, I had some input, so